Hi, this is Lindsay Oden, Special Research Assistant at the Washington State Attorney General's Office, and this is your AGL Moment in History. In this series, our office will be releasing clips from our Oral History Project, an ongoing effort to collect and preserve the history of the Attorney General's office as told by the people who have worked here over the years. In this episode, former Deputy AGs Jeff Goltz and Shirley Battan interview former Attorney General and Governor Gregoire. Gregoire served 3 terms as Washington State's Attorney General from 1993 to 2005. In this clip, Governor Gregoire describes the AGO's relationship to other parts of the state's government, especially with regards to the governor's office. Having been both Attorney General and Governor, Gregoire looks at how sometimes the two offices can be at odds, and that having an independent AG is a crucial part of maintaining an effective state government. Let's take a listen.
So, prior to you taking office, and I believe this was back when Governor Ray was first governor, there was at least one attempt to legislatively dismantle the independence and authority of the AG's office by allowing agencies to hire their own lawyers. During your tenure as AG or since, has there ever been another situation like this, another threat like this? And so I just wanted to get your comments on how you view the importance of the independence of the Attorney General's office as we have statutorily in the state.
Well, I'm a big believer in the independence of the Attorney General's office. But as governor, I'm also acutely aware that the AG's office represents clients. And in the process of representing clients, you have to have a relationship with them, you have to discuss with them, you have to consult with them, you have to represent them. To do otherwise is do so at your peril, in my opinion. I remember having a lot of discussions, and you folks might remember this as well. I'm one of those who believes you have more authority if you don't test it than if you do if you test it. So I remember very distinctly, would always hold near to our chests the right of the Attorney General's office to make independent opinions, particularly when it came to appellate work. But that didn't mean that we would be smug about it or condescending. We were always professional and humble about it and consult and try and persuade or dissuade. But in the end, I wasn't, let me just say it like this, I wasn't willing to test it because, again, I believe you have more authority when you don't necessarily answer the question of how much authority that you have.
Did you find, in the relationships with other attorneys general around the country, in our state, for a number of administrations now, it's always had a reputation of being very nonpartisan administration. How have you observed other offices around the country in that regard?
That's not true. It's just not. It's highly partisan. Let me come back, if I can, for a moment to the tobacco case. When the word got out, who would ever have in their right mind think that we'd get $200 and some odd billion over 25 years, but to go on forever, and that the private sector lawyers who we had put on contracts would get some percentage, right, of attorney's fees? Who would ever have thought that would ever happen, right? Now, ours in this state deserved a good sum because they were many weeks into trial when we settled. Some had just filed. Some had never gone to do anything and got hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in attorney's fees. So that resulted in a lot of legislation around the country where AGs were not, their authority to make independent decisions about filing those kinds of actions was taken away. Not so in this state. We were delicate about it. We watched it with much trepidation. But that's the politics of it. Now, tobacco did raise a lot of politics, no question about it. I remember when we were talking about the settlement, the word got out to the governors, and the governors were, that's our money, that's not your money, AGs. And so we said, well, wait a minute. It's any other case. It has to be used to address in some way the harm caused by the No, so we had to finally back away and let each state handle it on their own. You know what's happened. It's not been used properly. But AGs are the product of those respective states, and they are, in many instances, highly, highly partisan. And it doesn't matter if somebody sees you as a potential candidate for governor in the state. Still, the tradition of this state is you will run it in a nonpartisan way, and you will be viewed in running it.
So what makes our state different? Why are we so fortunate to have that culture in the Attorney General's office here, and you might not find it in Louisiana or somewhere?
I can't speak to how those others began or what their sense of tradition or history is, but Katie bar the door to anybody who comes in and makes the position partisan, because they're going to hear from every former Attorney General, and it won't be silent if they don't hear it the first time. They're going to hear from every member of the office. I mean, it's just embedded in who we are now. And every Attorney General, I mean, my gosh, Ken was the head of the Republican Party. And everybody said he was going to be partisan as all get out. Well, I was the hiring deputy at the time. He didn't care. He did not care. But I remember one time I naively gave him a candidate who apparently was I didn't know it, but a dramatic Democrat. And so he came down to see me and he says, "Do you know what you've done?" And I go, no, what did I do? And he tells me about how this person is, big in the Democratic Party and so on. And I go, oh crap, I didn't know that. But I'm telling you, she's a good candidate. Well, he did the interview and he came down and he said, "You're right, she's a good candidate, hire her." So, I don't know of anybody who's broken that tradition. And Katie bar the door if they do.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about your relationships with the different governors over your tenure as AG?
Oh, well, my relationship with Booth, I guess it goes back to John Spillman, doesn't it? John Spillman, bless that man's heart, remembers me. I can't, to this day, neither one of us can remember why I came to his attention in the AG's office, but he's always had a fondness for me, and I've always had a real fondness for him. So, but I can't remember that. Booth, it was comparable worth, and obviously offered me the position of ecology and so on and so forth. And then Lowry and Locke. It's my relationships as Attorney General and in the office were always really good, really good. When you get a client who's not a lawyer, they can be intimidated by the law.
Yeah.
So you have to be very careful about not misusing or abusing the fact that you're a lawyer and they're not. And I was always very conscientious about that and would say, "Well, now, Governor, you understand you have options here. Yeah, I'm giving you what is my best legal advice, but it's yours to take or not because you have other options." And it always stood the relationship well. But I've always had a great relationship with our respective governors as I served in the office and as AG.
As AG, do you have regular meetings with the governors that you design?
Well, I started that as governor because I didn't feel. I got tired of they'll call you when they've got a crisis, as opposed to maybe we can have more of a relationship. So we didn't do it that much. But I'll give you one piece of advice I've always given every governor, which is the single most important thing I think you'll do while you're governor is you will appoint judges to the bench. Because much of what you do, you'll be gone in a couple of years, everybody will forget, and it won't mean anything, and the next person will have changed it. That is not true with them. And they meet the public every single day while they sit on that big bench, and they're either meting out justice and they're doing it right, or they're not. That is one of the biggest things you will do while you're in office and one of the biggest legacies. So I think that, that kind of relationship has always served us well. And then our SG and our chief legal counsel inside the governor's office has always had a really good working relationship. And our respective clients, for the most part, the agency directors and the division chiefs have had good relationships. So I think that, again, the office has just said we're going to be professional about this.
So you served as president of NAG, which is the National Association of Attorneys General, in 1999 to 2000. Can you tell us a little bit about what that was like and what you chose to focus on and any impacts that had on the office?
So what that time, I don't remember real specifically, Shirley, but what that time was about was implementing the agreement, the tobacco settlement, I should say. That's where the focus was then. And it ended up being fortuitous that I became the head of NAG at the same time I had been the chief negotiator in the final rounds. So I was really able to get us through what were it's one thing to negotiate a settlement, it's another thing to implement it, and very challenging times. So that's where much of the focus of attention was. And each of the respective states were dealing with the problem of their legislatures saying you will never have this authority again. All of that was happening. To be perfectly honest, there was a bad thing happening then that has played out, and I think it's very sad. And that is, much like us, the National Association of Attorneys General, when I first joined it, was very nonpartisan. I remember when I first got there, I couldn't tell you who was a Democrat and who was a Republican or a vegetarian or whatever. They didn't know, and it didn't matter, and no one talked about it. And I don't know if it was tobacco or what it was, but it started moving in the wrong direction. And they started creating the Raga and Daga.
Republican Attorney General's Association and Democrat.
Right, which to this day I think is the worst thing they could ever have done. And the series now in the New York Times is quite unfortunate. But as attorneys general, you have to be careful about taking money from the very people for whom you have to take your responsibility in consumer protection. So that was a tough time. It was starting to emerge, and we were having knockdown, drag-out fights about it. And so the old guard, myself included, fighting it, saying, this is not who we are. We shouldn't be like the National Governors Association. Look how divided and partisan they are. We don't want to be like that, and so on. Well, I lost that fight.
Thanks for listening to this AGO moment in history. Be sure to like and subscribe to receive updates when we upload a new episode. On our next episode, the last in our series on Governor Gregoire, she talks about the highs and lows of her tenure as AG. Thanks, and talk to you again soon.